Hi everyone, this is Dakota McLean, and here's your tip of the week. As you saw by the title of the video, we're going to be talking about how to hit out of the rough. So we're going to do one where we're going to be around the green, and then we're going to do one when we're out in the middle of probably about 100 yards in the rough. I'm going to show you the difference in both of those and why it's a little bit different when you're hitting out of the fairway and hitting out of the rough. It should make it a little bit more clear, so that way whenever you are in those situations, it'll be a lot easier for you to understand and you can play your cards right whenever you're trying to hit into a shot. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start out by chipping out of the rough onto the green. So we're going to start out by chipping onto the green when we're in the rough around the green, okay? So when you are hitting out of the rough from this area, as you can see my ball is nestled down pretty good. There's a couple things you want to keep in mind. One is that the grass is pretty long, so that means you got to hit it a little bit harder because you need to cut through the grass. So when you're doing that, you want to take a few practice swings. So you're just trying to get a feel of how it's going to grab whenever you are trying to hit into this rough, okay? Sometimes it's sitting up a little bit, sometimes you might get a flyer lie. Flyer lie is where the ball's sitting up a little bit higher, so it's going to catch on the top of the face, and it's actually going to sail a lot higher and a lot farther. The one thing to keep in mind is that whenever you're hitting out of the rough, you're not producing very much spin at all. The reason being is because that there's grass in between the ball and the face, which is going to deplete all spin. So you're trying to play it out like you are hitting a bump and run, where it's going to roll out. So you have to find your landing spot whenever you're hitting onto the green, okay? So that's the first thing. So also, when you are hitting out of the rough, you have to keep in mind is that the grass, since it's so thick, is actually going to close down the club face. So when I'm setting up to like hit a shot, I'm actually opening my face just a tiny bit, and I'm really trying to keep that face staying open a little bit, because what's going to happen is that grass is going to grab this hosel right here, and it's actually going to close it down, which sometimes you might see that ball jump straight to the left. So when you're doing this, what I would recommend, set up like you would, like you're hitting a nice chip shot, and you're opening the face just a tiny bit like this. So I'm not setting up square, I'm setting up just slightly open. What happens is that it's going to come out a little bit higher, so that way it lands a little bit softer, and you're just trying to play it and hit down into the ball, so that way you can land it on the green and you can let it roll out, and you'll always get out of the rough every time. So that way we're not hitting it super low. So that's the first thing that you want to do whenever you're hitting around the green. So next that we're going to talk about hitting that 100-yard shot, and this can go from 100 all the way back to 200 yards whenever you're hitting out of the rough. So just keep this in mind, this isn't just specifically for 100 yards. So whenever you're hitting out of the rough, like we talked about when you're chipping, is that you're not producing very much spin. So what that means is that it's going to actually not produce spin where it spins back. It's actually going to bounce and then roll a little bit. But also you got to keep in mind to see how the lie is. See if it's sitting up a little bit, because you have a flyer lie like we were talking about on the chipping green. You want to make sure that it is not sitting up super high, and then it also can change your club selection. So from 100 yards I usually hit about a 58 degree. Right now I'm hitting a 54, just because of the fact that I have to swing a little bit harder and I have to get down a little bit more. It's not going to come out the way that I want to. So I have to hit it a little bit harder. It's going to produce a little bit lower ball flight. And it's also going to help me get onto the green. I don't have to hit it as hard, but I still need to get it there. So that's why I went down one club selection. So I went from a 58 down to a 54. The setup is going to be very similar to what you were doing over there. The face is going to be slightly open, because that grass is going to cause that face to close down, and we don't want that, because then we cause it to pull, and we just want it to be square. So when I'm setting up to hit the shot, I'm just setting up like this, trying to make sure that my face is slightly open, not closed or anything, trying to commit to the shot and try to hit down into it, okay? Because you never know how deep it is. So you're just trying to set up correctly and just try to hit down into it. You're gonna take a clump of grass, you're gonna take a big divot, so that way you know that you got down into it. That's what you're trying to produce whenever you're hitting these shots, whenever you're out in the rough, because not all the time we're in the fairway. So we want to try and practice these ones whenever we're out there on the practice green or anything like that. Try to do those shots whenever you're out there hitting into the greens and everything like that. So that's the tip that we were going by this week. Going around the greens and then hitting out of the rough whenever you're out in the middle of the fairway, just a little bit right into the rough. These are the ways that I want you to be taking these shots and then just running with it, because you never know what it's going to be like when you're hitting out of the rough, because it's always different. The fairway, you can at least know you're always going to get a perfect lie, unless you land in a divot, which we're still waiting on a rule change for that. But that's all the time that we have for this week. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I'll see everybody next week.